Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Even though it's kind of cloudy and threatening rain today, we're supposed to have 2 or 3 nice days in a row coming up, so I'm getting ready to cut another 5 acres of hay following the rotation schedule that I laid out 2 videos ago. This time I'm going to be cutting it with the 656 hooked up to my hay bind, but I want to take this video to talk about how the 756, my kind of new tractor, and the MD, my new tractor, performed last time, because a bunch of people asked about it and they each had their bugs. Some of them minor, some of them really major. Heck, it's starting to rain. I wanted to let you know that Red hasn't had her piglets yet. She's holding on to those little guys. I don't know. She's dilated, so I think it's going to be any day. And we had 1 calf. Our cow Sally had our first calf of the year, a bull calf, and the other one should be coming right along behind it. So that's a kind of baby update. Up in the big barn here, we got my Farmall H. I'm going to use that for raking and tedding. I changed the oil, cleaned her up. She looks spiffy. And here's the 756 diesel. This tractor worked great, I would say, cutting and baling hay. It didn't run into any loads that bogged the engine down, seemed to handle everything with ease. The engine ran great. As you remember, it smoked on idle, and it still smokes some on idle, but when you open it up and put a load on it, the exhaust runs clear as can be. I couldn't detect any smoke out of the exhaust. So these old engines were meant to work. I didn't find anything wrong with the health of the engine in this tractor when it ran flawlessly. Engine sounds beautiful. But, and this is kind of a big but, the transmission needs some work. It's got some issues. I adjusted the torque amplifier and the transmission brake and things. I think the transmission brake is just wore out, so it still has difficulty shifting, and it tends to want to jump out if you don't get it seated in all the way into gear, that is. It may be that the linkages on the shifter need to be rebuilt. That's a common thing with these old tractors. And it's got a clunking noise in the rear end when you first start off in gear. These are things I'm going to need to look into. With any tractor that I buy, it takes me a while to learn the tractor and learn the mechanics of the tractor. It's one of the things I love about getting a new to me tractor, is learning how everything works and the ins and outs, and reading online about all the problems that people have and actually going in and fixing them. And this transmission is going to require some fixing. Here's something else that tells me something wrong is going on with the transmission. This light right here, this is the transmission pressure tell light. In other words, the transmission has hydraulic pressure, mainly to the TA, and if the pressure's low, this light comes on. Well, after the tractor warms up, say I've been mowing for an hour or so, this light stays on. It always is on when the tractor's off and when I push in the clutch, because pressure gets dumped. But when you clutch out and running in gear, the light stays on. And I'm pretty sure that it's not the sensor. The sensor's not bad because it works fine when it's cold, and it's going along with other issues that I'm hearing in the transmission. When I shift the TA, sometimes there's a little delay before the TA engages. I can feel it kind of jerk. So I'm thinking that low pressure is the first place to start. It may well be that the bulk of my transmission problems are caused by this doohickey right here. This is the MCV, or multi-control valve. This tractor has 2 separate hydraulic pumps. It's got one behind this plate and behind all this business that's in here, orifices and springs and O-rings and check valves that power just the steering, the brakes, and the torque amplifier. And then there's a separate pump that controls the 3-point hitch and the hydraulic remotes that you use to raise and lift equipment with the hydraulic cylinder. So this business in here, the first thing to do, because I think I got a pressure problem, and that may be why the TA is slow to engage and the light's coming on, the low pressure light, is to test the pressure on the test port on this, and then start to work backwards and, make sure that my pump is working. And I may have to take the MCV apart. It's not uncommon for an orifice to get plugged up with debris in them, or something to be wrong in here. we're just going to have to get into it. It's going to be kind of cool learning how all the hydraulic systems work on this tractor because it's complicated. Here's a diagram of the MCV along with a description of how it works. There's a lot to it. And here's a diagram of how the power steering, brakes, and torque amplifier circuits work together from the MCV. There's a lot to that too. And the only other thing I noted on this tractor is I'll get oil leaking from around this cover plate here. And this is an inspection plate for the clutch and also has a timing pointer inside of it. I suspect that probably the rear main seal in the engine is leaking a little bit and it's flying off of the clutch and the flywheel and coming out here. So even with those issues, the tractor's fine to use, I think. I wanted to use the 656 this time around because I haven't given it a workout a little while and I really like driving it, so we're going to use that one for the next cutting. Now I got to head down to my shop and show you the MD. Oh look, the bush is growing back up. I like that. Bought a brand new tire for the baler. Gonna have to mount that. Here's the MD. She's got a little issue, and it was very discouraging. I used the MD to cut some of the hay, and it ran great, ran super, ran the hay bind really well. The only thing I really didn't like about it is it doesn't have live hydraulics or live PTO, so you can run a hay bind with it just fine when you're used to a non-live tractor, but it's a heck of a lot easier to use the 656 or the 756 with live hydraulics and PTO. So it ran great, it had plenty of power. I mowed, I think, in second gear, and that was pretty tall grass I was mowing through. The engine sounded awesome. And then I raked with it. No, I tedded with it first, tedded both fields with it, raked the first field with it, and then I had to start baling, so Dad took this tractor and went to rake the other field. And he raked the other field with it and it ran fine. And then he pulled out of the field and he was going to bring the tractor back up. And the tractor went bang, 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 boom, and quit. Engine locked up. Dad said, well, Dad came up, I was baling in the other field, his head hung like this and said, I broke your tractor. I think it dropped a valve. I put so much work into this tractor. I was busy baling, so I didn't even have time to really put it on my radar. And I finished baling, and Hillary and I went down the field and pulled the tractor up in the shop the next day for me to take a look at what had happened. So I pulled off the valve cover, and sure enough, this number 3 valve had dropped down into the cylinder. And I have a borescope, so I put the borescope inside. I'll stick it in there and see if you guys can see what I see. It's not a very clear image. Luckily, the borescope head just fits down through the valve guide. And I hope you can see that. You can see the valve stem kind of crossing the screen from lower left to upper middle. And then there's a separate piece down the bottom. You can see the valve sitting on top of the piston down in there. So it's in at least 2 pieces. And here I think is a likely culprit, a defective valve spring. It broke into, well, 4 pieces in the end, but it probably just broke in half or something and then started banging around and broke other pieces off. It damaged the valve keeper on the top that goes on top of the spring here. You can see where that got hammered on and marked up. Bent the push rod on the other side. Let me roll this. You can see where the top of it's bent. And I have yet to know how much damage there is inside the engine. I got to pull the head off and see how badly the head got banged up, how badly the piston got banged up, how badly the sleeve got banged up. Best case scenario is they didn't get banged up too bad, and maybe I can just hone the sleeve out and the head will be fine. Worst case scenario is, you know, that broken valve stem that's crossways in there dug into the sleeve, you know, broke into the head, broke into the piston top. I just won't know until I get the head off, and I don't have time. There's a lot to taking the head off. I don't have time to do it for a while, so it's going to sit in here. The other thing that could have happened is when that valve dropped in and the piston came to a sudden stop, who knows? It might have hurt the connecting rod underneath the piston. I just don't know. It's going to take a lot of investigation to figure it out. So it's extremely discouraging. I finally got this tractor to where it was running awesome, looking like new, fixed all the leaks. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. And it wasn't Dad's fault. It was bound to happen sooner or later. I think that I probably only have 20 hours on this engine, and to have a valve spring break, I think if I get this apart, I'm going to wind up replacing all the valve springs with new old stock if I can find them, because new old stock, I trust that a heck of a lot more than what I got in here now. I don't know the source of these springs. I'm going to have to check, but new old stock. What can you do? It's very frustrating. You just keep marching on. I have had setbacks on this tractor before, right? Remember how long I had to wait for the machine shop? What was it, 3 months? And we just kept plugging along. This is why I don't take these restorations lightly. You know, I'll get people that say, restore this, restore that, paint this, paint that. It's a lot of work. It is a ton of work to get this stuff done. And once you start a project and get into it, you're looking at hundreds of hours. So it's not like bing, bang, boom, restore one tractor after another. By the time I get this running the way I want and it's trouble-free, I'm going to be ready for a break for quite a while. That's why I said previously I only do one of these tractors every 3, 4, 5 years, because I've had enough about the time I get one done, and I'm ready to move on to some other kind of project, fixing clocks, doing woodworking, or maybe reading a book in the winter. Anyway, that's my update on the equipment. I guess it's lucky when you collect tractors, though. I've got 2 with various problems, one that's still runnable, one that's not, but I got 2 backup, well, I got more than 2 backup tractors to take care of hay tomorrow. So, keep your chin up, just keep moving forward. I hope this video is informative. It's life on a farm. I'll see you next time.